What is your name, sir?
Darren Gooden,
And where are you from, sir?
Ohio.
Were you born in Ohio?
Yes.
And do you have a family there?
Yes, I do.
Are you married?
Yes, I am now.
Any children?
Yes, I have a boy and a girl, and I have 4 stepkids.
Can you maybe move up to the microphone a little bit so everybody can hear you? You said you have a son and a daughter, correct?
Yes.
And how old are they?
19 and 17 now.
19 being your daughter and son?
My son is 19,
Okay.
and my daughter is 17.
And do they live in Ohio as well?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And where in Ohio are you from?
Youngstown area, Poland, Ohio.
You ever been to Houston before?
No, I have not.
Do you know the defendant Leon Jacob?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Could you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how you became aware of who he was?
My ex-wife worked at a hospital in Youngstown where he was a resident at the time, and that's how I started to learn about him.
Okay. Now, so your wife at the time, what was her name?
Patricia?
Okay. She worked at a hospital where he was in the residency program.
Yes.
What was your wife's job there?
She was a recruiter for the residency program.
So while they were working together, did you ever meet him on a social occasion or?
I just heard her talking a lot about him. There might have been one occasion, I think, when I was at the hospital to meet her for something, and she introduced me to him at that time.
And what year was this, if you remember?
Probably around 2011, maybe. 2010, 2011.
And was there ever a time that you became aware of a relationship between your wife and the defendant?
Yes, there was.
Could you tell us how you found out about that?
Yes, I took my son to the hospital one night. He was having a hard time breathing, and she didn't want to go to the hospital with us. And when we ended up leaving the hospital, I got followed by Leon all the way to my house, and then he sped off.
Okay.
And
Look, let me stop you there. So you took your son to the hospital, and your wife at the time, Patricia, did not want to come with you.
correct.
Did that seem strange to you?
Yes.
Okay. And this would have been the same hospital where she worked at, along with the defendant.
It was actually a different hospital.
Okay.
I don't know if he was working at the time at that one or not. What I did was I ended up going through her phone records, and I found the phone number that she was on the phone with for a couple hours that night while we were at the hospital, and I called it back, and Leon answered the phone.
Okay. So going back to when you were coming home from the hospital, you said you were being followed.
Yes.
Okay. And did you know at the time what kind of car the defendant was driving?
I heard my wife talk about what kind of car he had, that then kind of put 2 and 2 together there.
And the person that followed you home from the hospital, the car that you saw, was that the same car that you believed the defendant to be driving at the time?
Yes.
And how far was it from the hospital to your house?
Approximately 7 miles, 8 miles.
Okay. And did that car following you home, did it follow you the whole way home?
Yes.
And was it that same night that you had looked at some records to see if there was any suspicious activity on your wife's phone?
Yes.
Right. Did you ask your wife about this?
Yes, I did.
Did you call the number yourself?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And what was the conversation you had with the defendant at that time?
I asked him if him and my wife were having an affair, what was kind of going on, and he told me, you need to talk to your wife about that.
And you and your wife eventually split up not long after that, right?
Correct.
Okay. And was the divorce filed right away, or were you separated for some time?
I think I stayed, we were still in the house probably maybe for about 8 months or so. When I filed a divorce, I probably left maybe a month after we filed, because I was told by our attorneys at the time to try to stick it out in the house.
And when we're referring to the defendant, Leon Jacob, do you see that person here in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Okay. Could you go ahead and identify him by something that he's wearing?
I'm sorry, what's
Just
that?
identify him by something that he has on today. Just say that's the man wearing such
The
and
blue tie
such. Okay. Right over here at the table?
on the end.
Okay. Your Honor, may the record reflect the witness identify the defendant?
Record will so reflect.
And are you aware, so you and your wife separated, correct?
Correct.
Were you aware at that time whether or not your wife continued to see the defendant?
I pretty much knew that they were still together,
Okay.
that they were dating, and
At that time, did you spend any time around her and the defendant together? Did you see his vehicle around the house, that sort of thing?
the house. When I left the house, yeah, the vehicle was at the house pretty much every day.
Okay. And at the time, how old were your children while this was going on?
12 and 14.
And so, what was the custody agreement like when you were separated while the divorce was happening?
They made it very difficult for me to see the kids. They wouldn't let me see them on my certain days. They,
And when you say they, who are you referring to?
Leon and my ex-wife,
Okay.
Patricia, they would bribe them. My kids told me that, they would take them out to eat, or if they run away back home, Leon would buy them certain stuff, whatever they wanted. It was just like whatever they really wanted, they manipulated them, I guess.
So you think, based on the circumstances, that the defendant, along with your ex-wife, was interfering with your ability to see your children?
Mm-hmm.
But you did have visitation. Was it
Yes.
50-50, that sort of thing?
Yes.
Okay. What sort of personal interactions did you have with the defendant around that time, if any?
I had some. You mean what did I? I'm sorry. Rephrase it.
When you actually personally interacted with him, can you tell us about those situations?
I had some restraining orders I had to put in place. Following us around, sitting in front of the house, type deal. A couple threats. He threatened us. Threatened to blow up my house. Threatened to kill me.
Threatened to blow up your house, and this is the house now. You're now living in a separate house.
Correct.
When you're separated from your wife.
Yes.
How about when you went to pick up the children at any time? Did you ever encounter him on those occasions?
Yes.
And what was that like?
He'd be standing outside, yelling, screaming, making threats towards me.
What sort of things would he say to you?
He said he wanted to kill me. He said he wanted to fight me. Just bad mouthing, swearing, calling me all kinds of names and stuff like that.
Did you ever engage him back in those discussions?
No.
Okay. Was there ever a time that the police were called on an incident regarding your son?
Every time,
Okay.
pretty much, yes.
Okay. And could you tell us about an occasion where, are you aware of an occasion where the police were called shortly after your son had left your house?
Yes.
Could you tell us about that?
My son showed up at the house for my visitation. They ran home, went back to their mothers.
And so when you're clear, again, you're talking about your son and your daughter.
Yes, they both left. They ran back. It was probably maybe a mile and a half
Okay.
or so back to the other house.
Okay.
About a half hour later, the police showed up on my doorstep, and they said he got hit in the chest. Leon punched my son in the chest twice, I think he said, and they tried to blame it on me to get child endangerment on me, so I would not be able to see my kids.
And you were never charged with that or anything related to that, correct?
I'm sorry, what's that?
You were never charged? You never had
No.
a criminal charge regarding
Not at
that?
all, no.
Okay. And eventually, were you able to get full custody of your children from your ex-wife?
Yes, I did.
And you mentioned that you had to get restraining orders. You had to pursue things legally against your ex-wife as well as the defendant, right?
Yes.
Was there any sort of order in place regarding the defendant's ability to be around your children?
Yes, he was not allowed around my children when my wife had the visitation.
And that was pursuant to an order, a protective order or a restraining order that you had pursued on their behalf?
Yes.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, you testified today that Patricia, your ex-wife, was having an affair with Leon,
Yes.
and that went on for about 9 months,
I'd say probably more like 2 years.
about 2 years, and that was while you guys were filed for divorce.
Well, at first, I had suspicions, like I said, of 1 year, and then when we went through the divorces, it lasted over a year.
So during this time, you of course didn't think the highest of Leon, I'm sure.
I'm sorry, what's that?
You didn't have the greatest opinion of Leon at this time, I'm sure. Now, you also testified that during this time, both Patricia and Leon were manipulating your kids to keep them from you?
Yes.
Is that grounded in fact, or is that just your opinion?
That's a fact.
And while this was all going on, you were dating a new girl at the same time? A new woman?
Yes.
What was her name?
Holly,
And how did Holly get along with your kids?
she got along good with them, real good.
Do you recall having a text message with your daughter back in February? In fact, that's going to be a message from Mackenzie, is that correct?
It says Mackenzie's name on it. I don't know who it was sent to.
This would be sent to you. I believe these are screenshots that you had taken and sent to the state's attorneys.
I don't recall that message.
Okay. Do you recall responding to her this message? Mr. Gooden, did Mackenzie ever have an issue with Holly?
At the beginning, no, she did not.
But towards the middle and the end?
Once her mother found out that we started dating, yes.
Then she began to have an issue? In fact, do you recall having a conversation with Mackenzie where she talked negatively about the relationship with Holly?
They were going through a lot at the time. There was a lot of stuff that went on. There were mixed emotions, you know.
Mm-hmm. And how would you classify Mackenzie's view of you during this time period?
I'm sorry, what's that?
How did Mackenzie feel about you during this time period?
Irrelevant, Judge. Sustain. Sustain.
You said that Leon, I'm sorry.
Excuse me. Sir, if I sustain the objection, means you don't have to answer.
Now, in response to a text that Mackenzie did send to you, would you go ahead and read that portion of your response to the jury?
Maybe not out loud, or?
Yes, please. Would you read it out loud for the jury?
No, Mackenzie, but I give your mom $700 a month, and you embarrass.
You need to speak into the microphone.
No, Mackenzie, but I give your mom $700 a month, and you embarrass me by the way you act. You don't call or answer your phone when I call you.
Thank you. And then, do you also recall sending a message to Mackenzie on March 11th?
But that was in response to because Leon and her mother took their phones off of me. So every time I text them and call, they would never answer their phones.
That's why you sent that message? It was not in response to what Holly had said to you? Or sorry, not Holly, but Mackenzie?
I have thousands and thousands of texts. So I don't know if these are in order or what.
These are in order. As fact, as you can see, the ending of this message continues on to this, which is what you directly said responding back.
Okay.
Same date, same time.
Okay.
So this was not, in fact, a response to Leon. This was a response to Mackenzie, your daughter.
Okay.
Why don't you go ahead and read, then, what Mackenzie had sent to you, since you disagree with that?
Judge, I think what the witness said is that the content of the message is referencing something he found out about Leon, not that the message itself was in response to Leon.
Correct.
I withdraw. And in fact, do you remember having a conversation again with Mackenzie, March 11th, 2012? Would you mind reading these messages to the jury?
And read into the microphone if you would.
Mackenzie, I have done nothing to you. Mackenzie, I have done nothing to you or Darren. You or Darren won't answer when I call or text you. But I love you kids more than anything. There isn't a second that goes by that I am not thinking and worrying about you. I wish you guys would give me this one obviously doesn't go with that one.
It still continues on.
It says, I said, I wish you guys would give me a, then it says, and hate that both of you. So there's obviously another text that goes
Okay.
with that.
Well, feel free to continue reading.
Are acting like this, you don't even give me a chance. I'm sorry for whatever has you thinking I am such a bad guy. I have never hurt you or put you or your brother in danger. All I want is my kids to be a part of my life.
So it's fair to say that you did have issues with Mackenzie and Darren during this time period.
Yes.
So during this time, your wife was having an affair with Leon Jacob, and you want to blame him for your relationship with your children. Is that fair to say?
For what?
For your relationship with your children. Is that fair to say? You blame him? You believe he was manipulating them?
Well, he was keeping them from seeing me.
You believe that?
Sure I do.
Now, you also testified earlier that Leon had punched your son in the chest,
Yes, he did.
and police showed up at your door.
After they called the cops, yes.
Did you ever press charges against Leon?
That was all worked out through the courts.
So Leon struck your child, and you decided not to go forward and try and pursue charges?
It was worked out through the courts.
So no charges were filed? Yes or no? Were charges filed?
I don't remember.
So no, charges were not filed.
That's a question.
Really never did answer specifically. So, are you still asking the question, or are you moving on?
We'll move on, Your Honor. Now, you also testified earlier that Leon was screaming and threatening you, that I think you said he wanted to kill you. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And this happened outside?
Mm-hmm.
In a public place?
Yes or no?
Yes.
This happened in a public place?
At my old residency.
Your old residence?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But you never called the police again?
Yes, there was a report made.
There was a report made?
Yes.
Were charges ever filed?
That I do not remember.
Who was your brother?
He was a chief of Poland Township.
Chief of what?
Poland Township Police Department?
Okay, so your brother was a chief of police.
Yes.
And so when these threats were made, you called your brother?
No, he would have called a patrolman. My brother did not get involved in anything that I did.
But your brother was a chief of police?
Yes.
Was there any kind of court proceeding regarding these threats of Leon wanting to kill you?
I filed restraining orders.
You did file a restraining order.
Yes.
Did Leon ever have to go forward and testify to this matter?
I do not remember.
Did you ever have to go to a court proceeding and testify?
I went in front of a person when I did get out in front, file for the restraining order
Was that just to an officer or was that to the court?
to the courts.
But you never went forward on the criminal allegation of the threat to kill you?
Honestly, I do not remember what happened with that, with all that.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Nothing further, Judge.
Sir, you excuse, thank you for your testimony.